So the previous lecture laid out the point that a large asteroid hit planet Earth, which then caused a large volcanic region to erupt on the other side of the planet, and together those two things caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. Don't forget the previous lecture before that, or a couple before that, where I mentioned that dinosaurs were also severely affected by the changes that were going on in the natural world around them, with the evolution of flowering plants causing a coevolutionary effect with insects and mammals, as well as an explosion of parasites and pathogens affecting them. Dinosaurs were in decline already, but then the final thing that kicked them off was that twofold asteroid and volcano. But they didn't fully go extinct. We now know that birds are dinosaurs. So, yes, all of the large non-avian dinosaurs, the things that we've been talking about, were eliminated, but we do have these things called the coelurosaurs. Remember, those were these small, carnivorous, very advanced theropods, and we have great stratigraphic evidence showing that they were slowly evolving into smaller and smaller sizes and more avian or bird characteristics. So that now we actually feel that these coelurosaurs, even though they are the saurischians, not ornithischians or ornithopods or any of those things that have bird-like names, that these things survived to become our birds. And so, yes, birds are dinosaurs. And this note set is just kind of a sort of a meandering through the bits of evidence that help support this for us. So, first of all, if you ask most people to describe a bird, most of them would say something about flying or just feathers. So feathers equal birds? Well, maybe. If you look at birds, here's sort of a picture of a bird, and it has a whole bunch of other features that are bird-like. And so you have to look at a whole suite of things, not just feathers, to say whether one group is part of or closely related to another one. Birds themselves have feathers, yes, and there's many types of feathers. So you have all kinds of stiff, long flight feathers. You've got downy feathers like you have here. Interesting to think about. If we look at vertebrates as a whole, we have this sort of group here, sort of birds, crocodiles, and dinosaurs are what we call archosaurs. And if we look at skull conditions here, we look at the number of holes in the back of the head. So for these sort of little cartoon skulls, the little skull on the extreme, the little hole on the extreme left is the nasal hole, the nasal opening. The large hole in the middle are the eye orbits, and then in the back of the skull you see you have a condition with no holes, and that is anapsid. We've got things like turtles that have that condition. We have synapsid or synapsid, and it's one hole, and we are that. So mammals are synapsids. And then there are two holers, two holes in the back, diapsid, and those are birds and dinosaurs. So those two groups share that condition. Now, birds today do not have teeth, but you know that a lot of dinosaurs had, well, almost all the ones we've talked about had extensive teeth. So there's a big difference between the two groups. Birds do not have teeth. The thought now again is that coelurosaurs evolved away from a tooth condition, and then these sort of toothless coelurosaur descendants are what survived. And in fact, we do find some toothless coelurosaurs in the latest Cretaceous, so we know that this is happening. Here's a bone set, the carpometacarpus. So if you remember your bones, your humerus is your long bone of your arm. Then you have your ulna and your radius, which are the two bones of your forearm. You have your wrist bones, your carpals, and then your metacarpals and all this other stuff here. Well, birds have a bone that is called a carpometacarpus, where they fuse up all of these carpals and metacarpals into a long pointy bone here. If you've ever eaten dinosaur wings, chicken wings, you have certainly handled or held in your hand and held between your teeth a carpometacarpus, shared by a lot of dinosaurs. If you look at a bird foot, birds, if you've ever seen bird footprints, they leave a distinctive three-toed foot print in the back in where they walk. The back digit is up here, and so you say that we have digits 2, 3, and 4 pointed forward. Digit 1 is reversed, and this is a situation for birds. And notice as well, virtually every bird, let's say all birds, have well-developed claws. Here's a picture of some bird tracks in snow. I had a bunch of these across my yard and driveway when we had our recent snow events. And if you look at dinosaur theropod footprints, they are very, very similar. And again, here's Samoa, the sort of three-toed print here. And again, it's a thing to see. And so a dog's footprints don't look like dinosaur footprints, but the chicken footprints are very much like, even things like these raptors here. And again, remember, they share these claws as well. And you can do a cladogram. Here's a very complex cladogram that uses or maps out digits of the hand. And so you've got crocodiles with digits 1 through 5, ornithischians with 1 through 5, but you see there's reductions in these things. And then you've got the sauropods, and then we start entering the theropods, and really Deinonychus over here, which is an advanced theropod dinosaur, has 1, 2, 3 digits. And then here's Archaeopteryx, which we're going to see is the very first bird, 1, 2, 3. What else? Birds don't have tails, but they have what's called a pogostyle, a little sort of extension here at the end of this vertebral run, and dinosaurs merely kept adding on sort of vertebral elements here. Birds, they've evolved away from the tailed condition. Pneumatic hollow bones. Dinosaurs had pneumatic hollow bones, and again, if you've ever cracked a chicken bone or a turkey bone or something, you see that birds have a hollow set of bones as well. This is done for a couple of reasons. It adds strength, but it doesn't add weight. So think about it. If you're a giant dinosaur, you're growing larger, it is a natural selection advantage to have hollow bones with this sort of corrugated network in between, because it adds strength. But if this were all solid bone, it would weigh 10, 20, up to 50 times more. So big, interesting thing. Birds have something that a lot of us don't know. They have a unique connection to their lungs. They have a pneumatized air sacs that connect to their bones. So we breathe in and breathe out, and the air goes into our lungs and then out immediately. These birds have air sacs that allow air to go into these pneumatized or hollow bones. Very, very interesting. And dinosaurs had these too. So there's good evidence from the bones that they had these air sacs and this connection to this flow of air through here. So a huge connection between the two. Rigid sternum. Sternum is this breastbone right in front of you. You have it right here, and birds have it have a sternum as well. But if they're going to be birds that fly, they have to attach their wing muscles, their upper arm muscles, to the front here for heavy-duty flapping of wings. And so they have a prominent keel or extension on this this sternum. So rather than have a flat plate like you and I have, they have this keel here in the middle. And again, if you've ever sort of bought a rotisserie chicken or cut into a turkey, you know that this sort of separates the left half of the breast meat from the right half of the breast meat, and the two little tenderloins tuck in here along the keel. some dinosaurs had very similar keels. Clavicles, breastbar collarbones. So we have two of these collarbones here. They're separate elements on the right and the left side for us. Birds have a fused clavicle. This is the wishbone. So if you've ever sort of, again, had a turkey meal and pulled off the wishbone, and you and some other friend or relative in your family split the thing to make a wish, well, you were splitting up a fused clavicle, which we call a furcula. And again, there are some dinosaurs that have this, and there certainly is the case for this creature here, Archaeopteryx lithographica. As far as we can tell, this is the oldest bird that has ever been found on planet Earth. And here's the skeletal condition of the thing, and that's its name, Archaeopteryx lithographica. There's the bones. Here is an artist's interpretation of it. So a feathered beast which would be walking on the ground. Here are the claws of the end of the carpometacarpus over here. And whether it could fly or not is still debatable, although you see in this earlier picture here, it's in the air. I mean, it might have just sort of climbed high structures like this tree and jumped off and glided, or done active flapping. Now, it doesn't have a big keel, which is usually a signal for flight. So it might have just been an active flapping type of bird at the time. Well, it's Jurassic in age, and it is found in Germany in this place called Solnhofen, which is a very, very fine-grained limestone. So now think about this, Jurassic. First bird, Jurassic. If you go there, it's a series of quarries, active quarries, where they are busting this rock up and using it for different purposes. And it's a very fine-grained limestone, so it used to be used for what's called lithography. They would literally carve letters and pictures on it, then spread ink on it and lay paper on it, and that was how they printed newspapers and books and prints. Actually made art objects from this. There's very little of that going on now, but there's still some. But it's it's an expensive stone that can be used in building fancy homes and offices and hospitals and such. And there's everybody in this quarry, and these quarries here are on the lookout for fossils, and you can find things like this. Now, well before we found an actual full Archaeopteryx, you found a few fossil feathers like this. So now they knew it was Jurassic in age, but here's a feather. That's a bird. Remember the old equation, birds equals feathers, feathers equal birds, that's it. And then a handful of specimens have been found, and they're given different names because it literally is a handful. It's just less than 10 of these things have been found. And you see the whole array of bones, and then you can see the sort of impressions in this fine-grained limestone of this array of things that end up being feathers. And the very best specimen of the world is this Berlin specimen. This is actually insured for millions of dollars. It's that valuable of a fossil. If you didn't have these feathers on here, this would have been just sort of described as the bones of a very small dinosaur. So dinosaur bones, but then a few other birdie-like characters that make it clearly a bird, but very much like a dinosaur. Again, another picture of one of these active quarries. It looks like any quarry around here. It just happens to be that they're busting up and getting into rocks that contain these things. And it contains a whole bunch of other things too. Here's an artist's interpretation of the environments of the Solnhofen. It was taken to be a quiet tropical lagoon, so that anything that either swam in it or flew above it and then died in it would fall to the bottom, and then their bodies would slowly be covered by sediment and they'd be preserved. And so not only are there Archaeopteryx in there, there's giant turtles and crocodiles and other dinosaurs and flying pterosaurs, lots and lots of things. Now, fast forward to really just as recently as a decade ago, and we are starting to find feathered dinosaurs in China. Now we're no longer looking at the Jurassic, we're looking at the Cretaceous. And so these things are very definitely close to the end of dinosaur times. And the same sort of type of environment, a very, very quiet lagoon where these things would die, they'd fall down in there, and then they wouldn't be disturbed. And so you not only get this whole set of beautifully articulated bones, but the array of feather covers on them. And they mostly all come from this formation, and you can see this beautiful feathers here, even the color striping of it. Really wonderful. And this made people start saying, okay, look, here's dinosaurs but with feathers. So they are reptiles with feathers. Let's look at feather evolution or feather embryology, feather development more and more. And if you look at the way feathers develop in birds, we have, they don't just sort of hatch out of the egg and poof, they have feathers. Some of them have little coverings of some of them, but really all a feather is a highly modified scale. So a scale like what you'd have on a lizard, on a snake or whatever, if that gets modified by turning off and turning on different genes, that's what this is showing, you can develop actual feathers. So as I say here, feathers are simply modified reptilian scales. And you can take just a basic scale here, and depending on the information that's presented, can develop any kind of feather imaginable. And yes, we have fossils of each stage of these developments in these Chinese feathered dinosaurs. So all of these things are there in beautiful, beautiful detail. Again, some of the preserved color striping on these things, just remarkable. Remarkable beasts. And you've got things like this Microraptor that we think actually would have been able to fly given the presence of all of these different features, including perhaps that it was flapping with both front and back wings. You get views like this as well. Microraptor, again, you'd see it fly. Look at the upper half of the body, you'd think bird, and then you add the second half. There it is. And then you've got a whole bunch of these things, Sinosauropteryx, beautiful feathered bipedal dinosaurs, Deinonychus, which previously used to just be drawn as a small little tyrannosaur wannabe. Now we know it's covered in feathers, and it is reborn, I guess you'd say, like this. And so the current view of birds is that they are descendants of dinosaurs. So here's a cladogram of a different way of looking at it, of all of reptilia. And so you've got an ancestral amniote. You've got the synapsids. Remember, synapsids have one hole behind their head, which lead to the therapsids, which ultimately leads to mammals and us. But this line over here, the sauropsids, we didn't really talk about them, but they lead to two conditions: the anapsids, no holes in the skull, and that's turtles, and then the diapsids, which can be all of these other things, so extinct seagoing reptiles, and then things that we know and love today, lizards, snakes, crocodiles. But then we've got the flying pterosaurs, not dinosaurs, and then the dinosaurs. And then if we do a more detailed cladogram, we know that the Coelurosaur dinosaurs are the immediate sister taxa, the closest living relative or the closest dead relatives to what becomes aves or birds. So dinosaurs aren't dead, they're not gone, they're just the beautiful little birds that you see outside your window.